Hello, my loves. Welcome to this week's installment in the Tarot Tutorial series. As we wind our way through the court cards, this is a week that I am sure for most of us will be a little bit easier to deal with than the pages were. This week we are talking about the knights within the structure of the court cards for tarot. They will look like the following within a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. They are collectively representative of the element of air. And that element, as we discussed in last week's video, which I do encourage if you're very new to working with the court cards to please watch the court cards videos consecutively, because I'm going to be referencing some of the work we started last week and bringing it to each of the collective court card energies. So again, the knights are the element of air, and they marry to each of the suits. So the Knight of Cups is air, the Knight of Cups is water of air. The Knight of Swords is air of air. The Knight of Wands is fire of air. And the Knight of Pentacles is earth of air. So when it comes to interpreting and working with the court cards, I want you to think for a moment of how you connect with the element of air. And this might be a time to pull out your journal and jot down a few notes. What does the element of air as a whole represent for you? It's typically thought of as an active energy. It has to do with the mind, with thought, and particularly within the court cards, the knights themselves are representative of an intuitive, active, impetuous type of energy. As you can see, each of the knights features a horse representing freedom, movement, momentum, direction. So the knights themselves are representative of active decision-making, active choice, active adventure, impetuous, passionate, forward momentum. We're talking about an energy that, if you were to be reading old school style, would represent teenagers to early young adults. So we're talking about an energy that needs to, again, to be impetuous, to act without thinking as part of learning and growing. So when we talk about working with these knights in regards to, remember, as we began to build with last week, an energy that we're interacting with, or an individual in our lives, or ourselves in a given situation, we're talking about movement, we're talking about growth and expansion, and we're talking about sometimes acting without thinking. What is an impetuous choice versus an intuitive choice? These are some things that you can reflect on as you sit with the energy of the knights themselves. For me, in a reading, the Knight of Cups is typically representative of an offer of love. When we think of the knights as being active, right, but not quite a mature action, more of an impetuous action. The Knight of Cups is often a romantic gesture, an offer of love. Is it here to stay? The Knight of Pentacles is dedicated in regards to his loyalty and reverence for Mother Earth, for the goddess. And so we see a sense of planning, of patience, of loyalty and devotion with the Knight of Pentacles. The Knight of Wands is very passionate, fiery, adventurous, believes in something, but sometimes without real proof to back up what they believe. They're fighting for their cause, but they can have a tendency to burn out quick. Think of when air meets fire, what can happen. And then finally, the Knight of Swords, heir of air, our knightiest of all knights. Kind of the easiest of the court cards for me to interpret. This represents decisive action, sometimes ill thought out action. This energy can be manipulative in shadow, but it is very much about forward momentum, about movement, and about learning, sometimes through painful lessons. So you see there's kind of an underlying thread that moves between the knights. growth, expansion, action, belief. What do we believe? We're exploring, what do we believe? Do we stand up for what we believe? Do we capitulate to others' desires? We're discovering ourselves. We're exploring freedom. We're exploring what we believe. When we connect to the Knights as an energy, this is very much what we can be working with. Now, when we connect with the Knights as representative of individuals in our lives, again, the Knight of Swords would be representative of Libra, Gemini, Aquarius energy. The Knight of Wands would be representative of Sagittarius, Aries, Leo energy. The Knight of Pentacles would be representative of Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn energy. And the Knight of Cups would be representative of the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces energy. So there is an astrological association in the traditional way we read tarot. When I experience the Knights as an individual in our journey, I'm often looking at someone who might not be seeing the big picture clearly, who might be acting without thinking something all the way through, who might be looking to us for advice or rebelling against us. When I work with the Knights as energy that is representative of myself or my client in a reading, I'm often looking at the Knights as showcasing that we are finding the self-belief to go after something. The suit that the Knight, is housed in will clarify in what direction that momentum lies for us. But we're often looking at seizing the day, going for something, giving something a try, perhaps acting impetuously, maybe being a bit manipulative at times, or committing to something that we might not be able to see all the way through if we're looking at the Knights from a shadow aspect. So these are many ways that we can understand and work with the Knights within the structure of the court cards and the larger structure of tarot as a whole. These are cards that it's important not to ignore in a reading, and the surrounding cards will inform how the Knights are interpreted in the spread. And remember, because we're reading intuitively here, we're tapping into our intuition to ascertain, do the Knights represent an energy or an individual in our reading? So I'm going to move into some demonstration here, but you will notice in the description box below there are a few journal prompts that you can work with in regards to the Knights, just as we had for the pages. I have 2 journal prompts for you to connect with here. When I react without thought, which Knight do I find I align with? When I feel passionate and follow that passion, which Knight do I resemble? So this is giving you an entryway into connecting with specific aspects within certain Knights. And I encourage you to flesh that out further if you feel called to. What Knight do you feel most aligned with when you feel very dedicated and patient in regards to something you believe in? What Knight do you feel most aligned with when it comes to romanticizing your life or falling in love with someone? Feeling inspired by the beauty of your surroundings. These are some things that you can play with in your journaling to help you ascertain how the Knights are speaking to you and how you're going to interpret the Knights when they show up in a spread. Now, as I said and demonstrated last week, the court cards are representative of energy, experience, or individuals for me in a card spread. So I'm going to give you an example here with the Knight of Swords. Let's say that we have drawn a 3-card spread for ourselves around a decision that we need to make. And we have showing up in the spread the 5 of Pentacles, the Knight of Swords to the 7 of Swords. How do we ascertain what the Knight is in this situation? Remember, just like last week, I like to run my hands over a card I feel blocked or confused with and just ask, is this an energy or an individual? I'm hearing it's an energy that I need to bring to a situation. So I look at these surrounding cards. Directly to the left of my Knight of Swords is the 5 of Pentacles. It definitely appears with this interpretation here, if this was a real spread and a real reading, that I would be being encouraged to take action on a sense of lack I may be experiencing. particularly in regards to security and stability for myself. I might feel taken advantage of in regards to another person. Perhaps someone took advantage of me financially or stole something that I had created or built. And I feel taken advantage of in this situation, but it doesn't change the fact that I also need to rebuild resources to come in from the cold, as it were, with the Five of Pentacles. So I can see it's time for me to act. It's not a time to stand still and see what comes to me. It's time for me to go after creating more of that abundance and security. Let's say that I want some clarity on how I do that. So I will ask, give me clarity on how I do this. Eight of Swords, very much a theme here around releasing self-doubt and focusing on fear and going in the direction that I am called to. So I have to set myself free. My tendency to overthink or to focus on my worst case scenario may be holding me back from creating more of that abundance. So as I work with releasing overthinking and fear, how can I craft more of that structure and abundance? How can I recover from what has been taken from me with that Seven of Swords energy? We have the Devil clarifying, allowing us to see here that there's something physical for me to move towards creating. So it might be that in order to recover the lost security, I may need to create something that I can share and offer for sale. From that space, I can rebuild the security I am currently lacking. Now I can ask from a divinatory perspective, will I be successful there? The High Priestess says, we already know the outcome. Further clarification, Ace of Swords. Yes, there is strong potential to build success in this new creative direction that will allow me to release the sense of being taken advantage of and to focus on building in a new direction myself. So that's an example of interpreting the night as an energy that I need to bring to the table in my current situation. Let's go to a different night. Let's connect with the Knight of Wands here. And let's say that in this scenario, after I tap into my spread, it is clear to me that the Knight of Wands is representative of another individual. Let's say I have a difficult energy that I need to deal with in my work environment. And the Knight of Wands represents this other individual. Not an energy for me to bring to the table, but another individual that I am dealing with. Let's say the other two cards in the spread are the Queen of Cups and the Ten of Wands here. So the Knight is representative of the individual. And let's say that I've pulled to gain some insight into the situation. So I can see that my coworker or the person I'm dealing with in my work environment tends to be impetuous, tends to fly off at the handle. They may not have a good level of control around their emotions. They are acting impetuously in this situation. Let's say that I want to understand what direction are they possibly going to move in here in this situation, the Queen of Wands. They may currently be in a very egocentric place, really feeling focused on themselves shining in the work environment. They may have a tendency to put others down in order to do so. How do I deal with this in this energy? How do I deal with this impetuous, egotistical, perhaps gossiping energy in my work environment? Well, I have the Queen of Cups to the left. This Court card may indeed represent an action that I need to take in regards to this coworker approaching myself and others in the work environment from the impetuous, fiery, overly emotional space of the Knight of Wands in shadow. I'm being encouraged to trust my intuition and to really lean into my empath abilities here, not to be overwhelmed by them. Next week, we're going to talk about this queen, but she's water of water. Not to drown in the other person's emotions, which are most likely feeling insecure, less than, but instead to understand that because this other individual is so insecure, they are acting in the emotionally unsteady, unstable manner that they are. With this queen, there's also an indication here not to fight fire with fire, but to fight our fire of air Knight with a double water aspect of understanding. Now we do have the 10 of Wands to the right of our Knight. Let's see how this applies. I would ask for clarity here. Another Queen, Queen of Pentacles. There may be someone in the work environment that will come forward to rectify this situation and dynamic with other energies here. Excuse me, and the dynamic with this individual and the other energies in the immediate work environment. If this were a real reading, I would say it definitely seems like this individual could have a tendency to kind of really disrupt the team energy. And there's going to be someone in a leadership position who is able to come in and shift this work dynamic. It may be very important for me to separately take this other manager or person in charge in this situation and dialogue with them about the work dynamic so that they can come in as a third party and address this situation. The outcome of this situation with this individual approaching as the Knight of Wands is the Ace of Pentacles. So if this were a real reading, I would say the outcome in the long run is a positive one. I, myself, or my client would be able to move forward in a more lucrative direction. However, it would appear that there does need to be a third party coming in and handling our Knight of Wands. I don't feel with these cards drawn that this is a situation where I myself should go forward and handle the communication. But instead, by being empathetic and yet advocating for myself in the correct channels, I can allow the situation to shift. But do you see how in this situation, the Knight of Wands is representative of someone who is very emotionally overwrought and has a tendency to fly off the handle. So the cards are letting me know that I want to be careful with how I'm engaging with this individual. And I don't want to fight fire with fire in this scenario, but I want to bring a sense of presence, a sense of compassion, and move through the correct dynamics within the work environment by talking to someone in a managerial position to handle the brass tacks scenario of dealing with this kind of fiery knight in my work situation. So this is how the knights can be an individual that we are dealing with in our journey. Now let's talk about working with the knight as ourself. Let's say we've done a 2-card spread for the day, and we can see that we are being asked to embrace the energy of the Knight of Wands. It is coupled with the 9 of Pentacles. So there is an encouragement for us to be passionate and explorative around building independence as we move through our day. We may find that our passion leads us in a solitary direction. However, it is no less abundant for being solitary, and there may be an experience of communicating with our spirit guides in a very profound way, a quite spiritually satisfying way, which is also an undercurrent within the suit of wands in general. And so our night can certainly be taken over with passion and reverence for the divine. And we may have an experience of that. And there's an encouragement to allow that to be a solitary but expansive experience as we move through our day. So this is an example of working with the Knight of Wands or any of the core cards in a daily draw when we're looking at that as an energy that we're being encouraged to interact with, to embrace within ourselves and embrace within our experience as we move through the day. So I hope if you are exploring working with the core cards in tarot, this video helps you to feel more comfortable with the Knights. Remember to connect into, as we discussed last week, the element the Knight is associated with, and an expansive, adventurous, mischievous, explorative essence in regards to the situation that we've chosen to throw down cards for. I am sending you, as always, oceans of love, and I will see you next week when we break down the queens within the structure of the court cards.